Right, we're rolling when you're ready, Al.
Hey there, guys. So we've got Calum Raistrick on the podcast today on the Progress to Perfection. Sorry, not Progress to, is it? Yeah, Progress Over Perfection podcast. We'll get it right sometime. So I've known Cal, as we just found out, then for 7 years, and Cal's been probably one of the biggest influences on my coaching career. And we've got a few questions that probably he hasn't been asked before to sort of see how he goes about his day-to-day life. So you want to start with the questions?
Is this the first podcast we've done, or have you done one before?
I don't know. I don't know.
We must have done
Being
one
honest,
before.
we must have. I think so.
I'm saying I'm a fanboy. I've watched them all and I haven't seen one of you two yet, so this must be the first one.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we have actually.
Maybe we
I
haven't.
think, yeah, maybe. So, like, the first question I've got to ask you is obviously you are one of the best coaches in the UK and definitely one of the best prep coaches in the UK. How do you manage like the overwhelming pressure and stress that comes with that?
I don't think you do at the start, which is the irony of it.
Fair enough.
It's first couple of years it is very overwhelming, especially when you start working with when you start working with athletes that have more exposure, or more people are post about it all the time, and they do check-in photos and it's suddenly on like 900 Instagram pages getting shouted out and just stuff like that. It just brings more weight to what you do because there's more of an expectation on they need to do well or they need to win. And I always say, like, the coaching side is you'll progress through your career where when you first start working with athletes, the only real expectation from the coach's side is just to nail the look and to deliver an athlete on stage. And then you'll get to a point where the expectation is for the athlete to win, and it's a very different dynamic when you get to a point where, like, in their mind and everyone else's mind, the only positive outcome to a show is for them to actually win the whole thing. That creates a pretty different landscape in terms of how you view things. But I think you just get used to it, mate. You can't really look too much into it because it's just occupying space in your mind that doesn't need to be occupied. And I think you've just got to think really objectively. And it's just it's another client example. It's another client, like you've got all of your client case studies in the past where there might be more people watching and it might be publicised more, but it's still the same situation at the end of the day.
Cool. So, would you say Josh Bridgen was your first exposure to sort of like that kind of world?
Probably, yeah. I think when Josh turned pro, it was like 2019, I think it was. It was the same year that I competed. I think that was probably the first bigger one, purely because of the fact that he had a big following, and he also had he had a YouTube channel, didn't he? And I think Josh was probably one of the first ones that was like homegrown UK talent. Lots of people were following him for a long period of time and watched him progress over time. And yeah, that was probably one of the first ones, 100%.
Do you find the pressure puts more intensity on your side, Cal, to deliver?
Yeah, it definitely does at the start. I remember sitting in what show was it? We did I think the first international show I did with Josh was in Portugal, in Estoril in Portugal, and I remember we were out there with his mum, with Amy, his girlfriend, and Andy Hillocks was videoing, and I remember that was the first international pro qualifying. I was sat in the hotel room the night before, and I was like, I really hope tomorrow goes well, because there's quite a lot of people expecting him to do really well here. And sometimes you're in a position where you do everything you feel is right and it doesn't go your way, and sometimes you're in a position where you do everything you feel is right and it does go your way. And I think that first show he won his class, but then lost in the overall. And that was my first experience of like football. Like, it was really positive that he looked great and he won his class, but we fell short with the bigger goal. But you also grow as a coach in those situations, and you figure out how you can communicate and deal with things in a better way, and stay level-headed and think in a more constructive, positive manner. Because when you're in the athlete's shoes, all you're thinking is negative thoughts at the start, but you've got to flip that around and change their mindset and look ahead. And I think 2 weeks after he won the pro card in Spain. But you've just got to go through those harder moments to kind of get better at managing them, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
most definitely. And with that, so like, what pressures actually come with the position that you're in that nobody actually sees? So like, we all know there's pressure, as you said before, about clients actually doing well within shows and whatnot, but what pressures don't people see? Like, what else do you have to manage within your life? Obviously, you've got Hannah. Like, what other pressures are there?
I think I think it's managing. Well, from a coaching side, it's managing expectations and also the pressure of hoping you can deliver what they have envisioned they want to actually achieve in the first place. And there's always a little bit of, the flip side of that is falling short and having to manage that on the other side and manage the relationship you have with that athlete and manage how you approach that after the moment happens and how you pick yourself up. And that's really hard at the start because it's your first experience where if things don't go your way, it's a lot harder than if things do go your way. Yeah. But you just get better at that over time. And I think from a coaching side, like we'll all say, because everyone will be the same, you just have to dedicate a lot of time and energy and emotion to that side of your, it's your career, isn't it? It's the same as any career. If you want to excel and you want to do really well and see what you're capable of, you're going to have to put a lot of time and energy into that part of your life. And that comes with sacrifices, that I don't know how Hannah has been with me for 11 years, but somehow she's still here, which is great. But like, people need to be considerate of that, and hopefully you do that for a certain length of time, and it starts paying off to a point where you can kind of buy freedom and time back, which is the long-term goal for everyone, right?
Yeah, true. Do you want to ask the next question, Carl?
Yeah, I'll go for the next one. So the next one's more personal for yourself. Is what values do you hold as a person? So what's like your top 3 values when it comes to just the way you view life?
Values as a person, I think like for me, values in a person is like the integrity you have as an individual and as a professional, regardless of the situation you're in. So, and that's something that will really keep you grounded as a coach and as a professional and in general. It's, regardless of how far you've come or where you are within your career, it's staying true to who you were and what you wanted when you first started. And I think coaching is really one that's quite unique because you can get anyone from any walk of life with any qualification and any experience that can come into this industry and exponentially grow really quickly in terms of scaling, in terms of revenue, finances, etc. And it's really important to just stay grounded to what you wanted at the start and what you valued at the start, and staying true to that, because otherwise you get your judgment very clouded in that situation. And I think the more that I've gone down in this industry in my career, it makes you value more like the people and the relationships and the experiences in the moments over all the materialistic stuff and the stuff that can kind of come and go very, very quickly. And don't get me wrong, like I've made mistakes and I wish, if I were to approach this again, I could have done things in a slightly more constructive, productive manner, but it's they're all lessons, aren't they? So I think for me, sure, integrity as a person is a massive one, and I think that's also something that when you, like a good example is like if you were to close a relationship with an athlete or an athlete moves on from you, you'd want them to be in a position where if somebody spoke to someone else about you or the coaching relationship you had, you'd want that to be spoken in a positive, constructive way. You would never want that to be a negative connotation towards yourself, and I think how you conduct yourself in the good times and the bad will generate that longer term.
Mm-hmm. And into that integral part, do you ever feel like there's been a moment across your career where you've potentially swayed from that and had to bring yourself back?
You might be able to hear my dog.
I thought Cooper stopped barking.
Coops.
Because you have to go back to
There'll be a little bit of wolf howling in the background. I think the biggest thing in that, yeah, you can definitely hear him now. The biggest thing in that situation is you won't get tested in the good times, but you'll get tested when decisions don't go your way. And I think you... Let me, one sec.
Go on.
Guys. Please. Shush. You don't even know why you're barking, do you? Can you see it? They're not here to take you away, don't worry. Yeah, I think the biggest thing there from a integrity standpoint and, you know, that side is you're going to be tested when things don't go your way, and you've just got to, you know, it's all, in those situations I've always thought you've got to wait before you react and think things through more before reacting on an emotional level, and you always then have more of a calculated response to everything you do. And I think a lot of that goes into coaching as well. And even to the extent of like when you look at prep coaching or making decisions in a prep, or you get, you know, a client checks in the morning and their attitude's changed, or they feel a bit negative about the check-in, or they're not, you know, delivering the progress they thought they would deliver. Your first immediate reaction often isn't the response that you actually send in the end. And you've almost got to think through or type out something and then review it and think, do I want to send that, or how is that going to make them feel? I think that side is like that's the real skill and art to coaching, because that's coaching the athlete and the person. And once you can start getting their psychology in the right way, that's where you're really going to start to build really productive, strong coaching relationships.
Yeah.
And is that something you've learned to do? If that makes sense, like you've learned that over time to respond slower instead of just responding emotionally?
Yeah, I think so. Like I think when I first started coaching, I think James Sutton used to coach me very back in the day when I was a PT.
Yeah.
Really back in the day when I was working at M10, and you know when an M10 was I think when we met at M10 originally.
We did, yeah.
M10, you're surrounded by the kind of coach that wanted to aspire to reach that top level of coaching, that pinnacle of physique coaching, and that was the mindset back then that I think you probably develop even more when you're working with Gen Pop clients and you're working with clients in person. You really get skilled at the personal side of coaching and being, you know, having more of a personable way of coaching, having more empathy, and I think that goes a long way when you're looking at coaching on the higher level as well.
That's awesome. And I think a similar question I've got is, you touched there on like psychology with clients, and I think obviously the whole prep process is obviously very logical when it comes to the changes you're making. How important would you say like the psychological aspect of you communicating with the clients is, and with the wins, with the losses, things like that? Have you got certain strategies you've learned over time that you use on clients to just improve their mindset?
Yeah, like the psychological side, the psychology in general is, you know, it's probably one of the biggest sides of bodybuilding. I did a podcast the other day with this chap in America, and he was talking about how much genetics plays a role in bodybuilding, and I said I'd view it as an elite level bodybuilding and also amateur level bodybuilding. I'd view it as, if you had like a pie chart, 50% of that I'd say is genetics, structure, you know, just general anatomy, their ability to grow muscle, how it looks on stage, how it poses. And then I'd say 25 and 25 is 25% mindset and the psychology of the athlete, and 25% nutrition, training, PEDs and everything else. And I'd say that because we've all seen clients that have the gift of God in terms of the genetics. They have, you know, the best coach or the best access to whatever, but unless this side is locked in where it should be, they never get to where they can realistically get to. And I've had that in the past where, like, you won't mind me saying it, but Momsey, I remember when Momsey turned pro, Finland 2020. It was the same show as China, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And he was a perfect example of, like, he has elite level, like 1 in a million genetics, like muscle belly is just ridiculous. And he'll admit it himself. He just can't diet. He can't suffer. He can't diet. He really struggles with that side. So he lived at my house for 3 weeks to finish that prep. And wow. I'm adamant, the only reason why he achieved what he did in that situation was just because of who was around him. He was in a house with 3 other lads prepping, and he didn't really have a room to slip there in terms of people around him. There was a stronger support network. He wasn't at home with like work stress and all those other things going on. The mindset is is incredibly important when you're looking at off season. People can get by, but contest prep is a different story when you've got that level of fatigue there.
I think like a person who can die,
where like obviously you see people come in with these genetic gifts and things, and then the element of the mindset isn't there, and that's something quite hard for you to lock in with as a coach that you can control.
It can definitely be nurtured. It can definitely be nurtured, but it is something that can be quite hard if it doesn't come to them naturally. It's something that just has to be nurtured over time, and it can take quite a long time. And also from that side, you really need to have good rapport and trust with the client for them to really start believing themselves. And then once you get that click, like, they can do incredible things, but you've got to work to get there in the first place.
So I was going to say Valentino, like that is the second name, isn't it? Valentino.
Yeah,
like he can die, can't he? Like he'll do whatever's needed. Like I remember when we were in Bulgaria, you both were living in the sauna. Do you know what I mean? Like he's willing to suffer to get to where he needs to be.
Yeah.
And I don't think everyone's willing to do that.
No, it's the hardest for me. It's the hardest side of bodybuilding psychologically, is when you have to push in a direction that your mind really doesn't want to go, and you have to do it for a long period of time. And I think the more you do it, the more seasoned you get, and the more comfortable you get there. But it's until you've gone there that first time, it's just alien. It's just completely uncharted territory, and it's really, really hard. Like I remember the prep that I did with JP in 2019. The only reason why I got into that condition was because I just wanted to impress him, and I just wanted to like get the pat on my back at the end where he just said, "You did well there, and you looked all right on stage." Like that's all I cared about, which is why I was willing to do anything and everything to get there in the first place. But that comes with trust, and that comes with like a respect within that coaching relationship. If you don't have those two things there, it's really hard to nail that balance when you're looking at the extremes of the sport.
Yeah, I agree. So I know this, but how did you? Because I've seen you work hard. Like I can still remember we were in Malaga Airport and we were all trying to get some sleep, and you cracked your laptop open at like 3 o'clock in the morning. But how did you build your work ethic? And was there anything that inspired you? Was it something that you've always had? Was it motivated from your family?
Yeah, both my parents are teachers. Like I've come from, like if you look at my family, like my brother was a high achiever. He played like international rugby. He was really smart in school, and I was always the one that was like all right at everything. I wasn't really that smart. I was all right at sport, but not at like the highest level. So it's really the only thing that I've done in my life where I kind of got the confirmation and got the realization I'm actually good at this. So I think when I got that realization like 7 or 8 years ago, especially when I was at M10, because it was like, this is a perfect environment to really master what you're doing here and get in the mix with the people that are all in the same mindset, they're all in the same place and want to do well. I don't know, it's very different. Everyone uses that analogy. It doesn't really feel like work when you love it, but I think when it comes to bodybuilding and when it comes to coaching, we never really realize how although we work harder than a lot of people in a lot of industries, and there's more hours, and being self-employed and running your own business is a stress in itself. Like when I first left uni, I worked in recruitment in London for 6 months, and after I finished that job, I was like, I can never ever do that ever again, because it was just abysmal, mate. Like I was commuting into London every day. I was finishing work at 7 o'clock in a shirt and tie, working at a desk all day in something that I hated. It was just a realization where it's like, I never want to do that ever again in my entire life. And that's when I started working on the gym floor, that's where it's like, it's going to take a long time to build this, but I know that if I graft and I work as hard as I can for as long as I can, something's going to come of this that I can sustain. And that's the last 11 years of being in the industry.
Yeah.
And at that point, did you know you was going to be who you are now? Like, did you have, when you started, a vision on where you are now, or is it something that's just come through as a byproduct of your work? Yeah,
just a byproduct of the work. The environment you put yourselves in, who you build relationships with, who you learn off, who you take energy from, and the direction you push in. I think it just comes as an amalgamation of all those things. And even now, it's like, it's just, I don't know. It feels weird when people say that, because for me it's just like I'm just cracking on and doing my thing and enjoying it. But I guess when you look back and you realise, there's a lot that's been done, but you can't really think that way because your mindset might change on what you're doing. So you've just got to keep grounded and just keep doing what you love to do. And it's a privilege to be in that position in the first place. Yeah, you can't take it away from people that you've got to work incredibly hard to get there. And I've done that for the last, over a decade of being in a position where people are like, why on earth are you working that much? Or why have you still got your laptop open? Or like being at family events where he's like, oh, he's on his bloody laptop again. But at the end of the day, like it's what it takes to build something like that. And it is what it is.
And you said there about being in the right environment. Who's probably been your biggest motivation, or people who have biggest motivation and inspired you throughout your career? I'm assuming James Sutton's up there.
Yeah, James is definitely up there. He's old enough to be up there now as well. I think M10 was a big platform for me in terms of getting a real glimpse of Mark being Mark running that, and me getting the opportunity there. All the lads that work there, I've still talk with them all the time now. Obviously Luke from the Muscle Mentors, Luke Hoffman again was the kind of next venture after M10, where to this day he's probably one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life, that really pushed me forwards as well, because the bloke was just like Rain Man in terms of coaching and anatomy and all those things. But you just everyone's got their own individual skills and what they excel at and what they're good at and what they like doing as well. And I think over time it's just kind of slotted in a place where Muscle Mentors for us was a lot of people doing a lot of things that they were good at, but at the end of the day that is going to have to diverge in one direction at some point. And I think that kind of gave birth to Pro Coach, because for me it was always coaching, it was always education around coaching and coaching. And then kind of Muscle Mentors ended up kind of forming into exercise mechanics, anatomy, and that side I was never as skilled or as knowledgeable as those guys, and it was always like my thing was coaching. So I think that kind of worked well for everyone, because the boys have got PT project now, and we do the coaching.
Yeah, cool.
Do you want me to go to the next one?
Go on then.
So if you was to go back and change anything you've done from when you started to where you are now, would there be any kind of things that stand out to you that you change or do differently?
The only thing I do differently is, and you can only do this when you know you've passed it, is when you start getting really busy, know the capacity in which you can actually manage effectively and not impact how you work and how you want to work. And I think probably 2022 was like the most chaotic year of my life and will ever be, because we were flying to like 2 countries a month with Loki. I had so many people in prep. Like I'm not joking. I was probably doing 30 prep check-ins every day, 7 days a week for the entire year, whilst traveling to 2 countries on average every single month. So if you weren't on a plane or in an Airbnb, you were in a taxi, or you might be at home for a week and then you're going elsewhere. Then you had jet lag on top of that. Every time we went to America, it was a nightmare because you had to work at night. Like that was just, I kind of just threw myself in because I knew you don't really get those opportunities very often. But I think looking back, I would have paced myself in terms of the amount of times I said yes when I should have stood my ground and said, oh, there's a 3-month or a 6-month waiting list, or I can't actually take you on at the moment. Whereas when you get those opportunities, especially when it's with athletes that you've always dreamt of working with, you're just going to think, yeah, this is amazing. Like I've always dreamt with working with athletes at that caliber. And you're in a different mindset when you're in that situation. But if I were to look back, I think I would have just paced the kind of peak of that slope a little bit more progressively, as opposed to just trying to say yes to everything and anything in that time frame, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I love the way you said there, you've got to go through it to know, because I feel like if you don't ever explore that position, you never wonder if you did enough.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Al, do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, go on, I'll do this one actually, because this is a good question. You asked it, though, not me, so that's why it's a good question. Can you identify a winner before they actually are one? So can you understand, can you look at someone and find out their potential from either how they speak, not just necessarily how they look, because as you said, like genetics is part of it, but you've got the mindset side of things. Can you sort of see who's going to win it or not? Who's got what it takes?
I definitely think you can. Characteristics in a person in terms of, and it all comes down to like their psychology and their mindset. Like bodybuilding and the kind of physique sport in general, you see a lot of like a person will evolve a lot over time in terms of their physical appearance, but often the psychological the psychological kind of resilience at the start will kind of give you an indication of where that can go with the physique longer term. So you've got to be very whether it's self-assurance or just the ability to just be very calmly, quietly self-confident in your ability to execute. Stay grounded in that time frame, not allow external noise and influence to really shift the direction that you're moving in. And I think those are the athletes that can kind of keep themselves in their own bubble and just chip away and just focus on their own progress. They're always the individuals that will go the furthest in the journey, or maybe the most smooth rate of progression. I remember, and it's also like people that just are not afraid to take opportunities, and also people that are not afraid to fall short and then go again. Like everyone in those situations, I've had so many times, like Hader, for example, in 2021, I think it was, when he turned pro. Like we did 5 back-to-back shows in a matter of a couple of months, 5 international shows. And I remember on that I remember flying to Denmark, it was, on that 5th show, and I was just sat there on the plane, and I was like, I hope to God that this is the weekend where he turns pro, because I don't know how many more times we can realistically do this and just say, right, we're going to go again, right, we're going to go again. And those are the little moments where it's like, it's just persistence and resilience are 2 massive characteristics for an athlete, because very few people will go and one and done it and just progress linearly like that. You're always going to have those bumps in the road, and the people that usually go the furthest are the people that can react to those bumps and just stay on the course they're on, and just not have their mindset or their decisions or their behavior or their approach skewed by just the fact they've fallen short. It's like, right, dust off, reflect, what can we change, where do we need to be better, go again.
Awesome. And that links into the kind of next one, like what's the biggest difference you see between like amateurs versus pros in the way that they view the process or go through the kind of, as you say, highs and lows? What's the biggest differentiator?
The irony is, I think a lot of the amateurs that turn pro have a professional mindset before they actually turn pro in the first place. Like you've got to think and I won't say like feel, but you've got to think like a pro. You've got to think with that level of meticulousness and discipline before you can really achieve those things, because they're going to come as a cumulative response as a result of you doing those things over a longer period of time, that consistently. But I think the only thing that will flip the switch, people that want to compete as in the pro league, whether it's a PCA pro or an IFB pro, whatever it might be, you've just got higher stakes, you've got more pressure, and you've got to live up to that pressure in the first place. And if you take away all the external noise and the social media and the YouTubes and all these likes and shares and stuff, it all comes down to your own ability to just want to excel as an individual and beat your last stage experience, or beat your last off season, or beat your last stage package. Like I had I don't know if you know Mitch Starr. He's a Welsh lad, men's physique IFB pro. He's about 3 weeks out now, and we met up a couple of weeks ago to check in. And last year, in his rookie season, in his pro debut season, he got top 5 at the Texas Pro, which is like tier 1, big IFB pro show. Got top 5. And in an American show for a rookie who's Welsh, it's like that doesn't happen normally. And I remember speaking to him when we were training a couple of weeks ago, and he just said that kind of set the precipice for him in terms of a bit of a self-realization of what you're capable of, and also the standards that got you to that 5th place. You can never stoop below now. It can only be set higher instead of lower. And I think when people get a pro card, that self-created standard for what you do every day with every facet of the sport just gets raised up a notch, because you're in a position where you know everyone else that's excelling are also at that level. So unless I'm there every single day, I'm never going to get to that height in the sport. Whereas when you're an amateur, there's such a disparity over the quality and the standard of the shows. You're going to get some people who are on it, you're going to get some people who aren't. In the pro league, 9 times out of 10, everyone's doing 100%, and unless you're doing that, you're not going to stand a chance.
Awesome.
And that just brings me on to a question that we never actually wrote down. So you said about managing expectations before, and obviously these pros have this higher level of standard that they need to live by now. How do you help manage it when they don't win? When they going in with the mindset of I need to win?
That you do, like, you've got to be objective in that situation. So like when you are in a position where, whether it's a client doing their first regional, or if it's a client trying to turn pro, or it's a client trying to qualify for the Olympia, the timeline that you've built for them is your kind of fallback for, if that first shot doesn't happen, what's plan B? And you aren't failing plan A if you have a plan B. You're just making sure that if plan A doesn't work, you can still achieve the goal. Yeah. So I'll always be in a position where I'd map out, if they go, right, I want to do this show, I'll send them and I'll map out a timeline that says, right, this is this show here where the goal is to achieve the target at this show. But we're in a position where we can also redirect if needed and learn from the feedback from that first show and take the judge's opinion or corrections that we need to make. And then there's a show 2 weeks later in X, and there's a show 2 weeks after that in Y. And that timeline just gives you the ability to think critically and be objective, as opposed to just sulking and thinking, oh, it's done now, like what are we going to do now? You've immediately got to focus on, right, we just shift to plan B and we keep on executing until this happens. And that happens for 99% of people that want to turn pro or want to qualify for the Olympia. You just got to have enough plan Bs before it actually happens in the first place. Because if you're at that standard and you're ready, it will happen, but you've just got to persist.
Yeah, cool.
I've got one more if that's okay.
Go for it.
So with fulfillment, do you feel like what gave you fulfillment, let's say 5 years ago, is still the same thing that gives you fulfillment now? So like a win that you may have got at an amateur show compared to a win that you may have got at a pro show, is the level of fulfillment the same, just on a different spectrum?
Yeah, like the fulfillment is, the only difference between fulfillment is, in that regard, you, like a couple of years ago, you weren't going to shows expecting athletes to win. You were just going to shows aiming for them to win, but it's also like, I don't know what's going to happen, and I hope they win, but I have no idea. Whereas now you're in a position where a lot of those athletes expect to place in a certain way. They want to get first call out, or they want to get to top 3, or they want to win. And that then shifts your mindset to, if you get an athlete. I remember when China turned pro in whatever year it was. Mm-hmm. Ali, you were there. And when she turned pro, I didn't even celebrate, mate. I just like, I just breathed a sigh of relief, and I was like, oh, thank God. Yeah. Like, I didn't even celebrate because I knew it was going to happen, but it's just a sense of relief where it's like, oh, right, finally, it's happened now. Because it was going to happen, but it's just that what day was it going to happen? Was it going to happen now, in 2 weeks' time, in 4 weeks' time, whatever? So a lot of those things now is, it's even Niall qualified for the Olympia in Toronto a couple of months ago. Like, you're obviously ecstatic and you're absolutely buzzing when these big wins happen. It's the best feeling ever. But it's more so now just it's a little bit of a sigh of relief from a coaching side, where it's like, oh, right, the plan did what it should do, and all the expectations have been fulfilled. And, you know, when there's a lot of external noise, it's almost like, from a coaching side, it's like, I know I can get him to that point, but there's a lot of relief when you finally get the job done. And that's not like jumping up and down celebrating now. It's more so like, oh, thank God, like I can relax tonight and know that plan got the job done.
Cool.
Remember when Becky Dean turned pro at Maidenhead?
Mate, that was
one moment where I think I ran over to you and you jumped in my arms.
Oh, what, with the broken rib, wasn't it? God.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
like, but it is that moment, isn't it? Because, like I said, when China turned pro, it was more of it was inevitable, wasn't it, that she was going to win a pro show. Oh, sorry, she was going to get a pro card. But it was more of I really, really hope it's this one.
Yeah.
as opposed to having to go and do another one, because you just know that it's just more time preventing the inevitable kind of thing.
100%.
But yeah, I can remember the Becky Dean one.
I think the first time it happens, you're like you just it's just celebration and you're ecstatic. And I think the more times it happens, it's you get a lot of fulfillment out of it. More so for the fact, like once you can repeat that success, it's a lot of fulfillment where it's like, right, I know my ability now to coach, and I've just got to keep on doing this now and replicating it over and over.
Yeah.
Do you find as well, like, you know how the excitement that you would have got when you took on Josh Bridgman when he first started, do you get that same excitement now with different clients, or do you feel like where you've achieved so much and worked with so many athletes, that excitement element's not there, or do you still have that?
No, you definitely still have it. 100% you still have it. You know, that I don't think that will ever change. I think the only change there is when someone like Josh started, it was like, right, you know, sky's the limit. Let's see how far we can take this. Whereas now, when you're getting those athletes with that big potential, it's like, right, I've got to nail this now, because I know what they're capable of, and I know they can get there if the plan is right. So the excitement, I don't think the excitement and kind of the buzz for it will ever go, but that will also be met with the fact that it's like there's a pressure now to get the job done, because you know the athlete's ability to go all the way, and it's up to you now to guide them there.
Awesome.
Cool, thank you very much, mate. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Cal.
All good. I'm actually impressed that the dogs only bark once then. I thought they were going to be barking through the whole thing.
I thought Cooper stopped barking.
Depends who it is, mate. If there's a postman, he's still pretty ferocious.
I can remember when he wouldn't stop barking, and then we must have come up to see you, and it must have been about like 2 or 3 weeks after he finished his army school.
Yeah.
And he didn't do a thing, and it was just dramatic.
Yeah.
Because it must be annoying when you're working.
Whenever we go away, we send him back. There's a lady called Shah who, and he's, mate, first couple of days he's like a robot again. He doesn't bark, and then the longer he slips back into habit, it kind of sips out again. Because I think Ava kind of spurs him on to do it.
Really?
It's he's definitely not as bad as he was, but he still does have a go if he wants to, which is most days.
See, I'm in two minds whether to get another mini dash hound or not.
You should definitely get one.
If between that and a Staffy, have you seen Chloe Pickford's Staffy?
Yeah, also good.
Yeah,
Also good.
So cool.
A lot bigger.
Yeah, no, but it's like, I've got long hair, mate, and I don't dress the most manly as it is. Me walking around with the mini dash hound, it's like, it doesn't really confirm much for me, so a Staffy may help.
In a leopard print carrier bag.
Pretty much, yeah, that's a pretty good, to be fair, around Stockton Heath, that'll probably work out quite nice. But do you want to stop the recording?
Yeah, I'll stop now.